The iPad Pro M4 is the most overpowered Apple device that I've ever used. I've been trying to wrap my head around this for a while now, and it's sort of like getting a sports car only to drive it in a parking lot. It's so versatile that you can use it in so many formats, but it doesn't fully do anything. You can do nothing in a bunch of different ways. I've been using it for a little over a month, and I've got to say it's the best powered Apple product that you'll never use. It's a really interesting review to make knowing that this isn't the most practical device to buy at a given price range. Assuming you've got $1,300 to $2,600 to spend, not including the pencil, well, for that you could get the latest MacBook Pro, an arguably more useful tool. More power, better window management. You could get the latest 13-inch MacBook Air and actually save yourself some money, coming in cheaper than that starting iPad Pro. In other words, you have to really strongly want an iPad Pro to justify getting it over most of Apple's other products. And so that's what I'm trying to explain here. Who is this for? Why would you get it? The easiest way to explain what it's like is to take you through the iPad like when I first got it, which is how it's better or different than previous iPads, what it can actually do this year, and is that enough? So when you first get the iPad, it's clear that it's a huge improvement. Apple warned us, they said that this thing is thin. It was mentioned like crazy, it was the first 13 things on the website, but when you actually get it in your hands, it's impactful. On previous models, the weight really was the biggest restriction. You take this ultra-portable device, but it's heavy enough that you can't actually hold it up for long before feeling strained. That means the default is awkwardly putting it on your lap, hooking it up to a keyboard, and let's face it, at that point, why not just get a Mac? But now they've made it much thinner and lighter, and it seems like the sweet spot where you can hold it up without fatigue, making browsing the web, reading articles, checking emails, a lot more comfortable to do. So now you're picking it up and casually using it like a phone, but obviously with the benefit of a much larger screen. And the screen you're viewing content on is incredible. The colors are vibrant, the OLED screen is giving you rich blacks which look amazing, the refresh rate makes it feel snappier all around than any other screen that I've used. But the most interesting twist is that Apple chose to debut their M4 chip in here. We'll get to how that actually makes the iPad better in the next part, but generally it means that even the MacBook Pro is using an older chip than the iPad. But then you get to the new accessories, which are exclusively compatible with this new iPad and not older iPads. You get the new Apple Pencil, which looks the same as last year, except it says Pro on the side. Now you can hover to show an indicator on screen, you can barrel roll and it'll actually rotate, which is great for artists. You can also now squeeze to bring up the toolkit, which again is really handy. But the magnets that connect this thing to your iPad with the Smart Connector are in a different layout than previous iPads. That means that it can't connect to older iPads. Weird. Then you get to the new keyboard, very similar to last year, color matched to the iPad, crazy thin and light, even in comparison to last year's iPad keyboard, and a new aluminum palm rest that makes it feel more like a Mac. But again, this costs more than the lowest iPad in the lineup, and combined with the base iPad and the keyboard to make it feel more like a Mac, you could very easily actually get a Mac, like the 14-inch MacBook Pro or even the 15-inch MacBook Air. More on this later. So you get all excited about these new features and how awesome it is to hold an iPad as thin and as light as this. You get the new accessories with the new features and something that feels extremely polished and just a joy to use. But at a certain point, you come back down to the fact that this is just an iPad. Think about it in the three main ways you use an iPad Pro. As an entertainment device, you get a great screen, OLED with crisp blacks, great speakers, great contrast, making it really awesome and really portable screen. It's also got great performance for games thanks to the new M4 chip, and paired with a PS5 controller, it really feels like a gaming console. Second, as a workstation, you get all your favorite apps, you can have emails and Teams pinned together, Safari tab groups, the center stage camera for all of your meetings, files let you sync all of your external accounts in one place. It generally works. 3, as a creative. Whether you're designing with Apple Pencil, editing photos, or in my case, learning to code, this is a highly adaptable powerhouse capable of running somewhat limited versions of the apps that I would have had on my Mac. So then you package all of these things into a tablet, but you also integrate it with iCloud for all of your messages, picking up phone calls on it, your reminders all sync, and they make it so if you're gonna buy a tablet, this one just makes sense. But is it enough? Well, I waited for iPadOS 18 to be announced before making this part of the video. I sort of expected Apple to have this genius plan to make use of that M4 chip to make the iPad more like a Mac. So I was surprised when iPadOS was announced and really just came with a lot of customization options. Sure, you can now move icons wherever you want on the screen. You can change the look or the feel of your icons. You can now customize your control center to be more helpful and more personal than it was before. One actual helpful thing is that you can now format hard drives on an iPad, eliminating the need to use a Mac for that specific task. And that, my friends, is everything that's included in iPadOS 18. There was one point where I was writing the review and I had to stop and reflect and think, does iPadOS 18 change anything about the iPad? Is it finally becoming a step closer to a Mac replacement? Don't get me wrong, I love doing everything that I just explained with my iPad, and these customizations are really enjoyable quality of life updates. But throughout my month, I was constantly reminded that this is still an iPad. It's not that I'm an iPad hater. I genuinely think there's a use case for a Mac-like experience with a touchscreen, but the problem is there are fundamental things holding it back from being your Mac replacement. And they're the things that exist no matter how much power is packed into this thing with the latest chips. The main problem with the iPad is that it's fundamentally closer to an iPhone than it is a Mac, but we're trying to do Mac things. The apps are built from iPhone, which is meant to be a single screen experience, then expanded to an iPad screen, and it's still not fundamentally built for multitasking or multi-window. Stage Manager is meant to combat this, but it seems to be missing a lot of key functionality, like limiting sizing or placement on the screen, which quickly becomes frustrating for workflow. The second thing is that the file system management just isn't great. Unlike with Finder on a Mac, your documents are stored differently. Documents are stored within a folder for the specific app that you're using, and those folders aren't in one centralized place. Sometimes they're in iCloud Drive, sometimes they're on your local device. This makes the whole thing feel unorganized. The app itself lacks customization of the bottom bar, and it makes it hard to explore all of your files. Overall, these things make the iPad feel more difficult to use for very specific tasks. It feels like it should have taken note from macOS instead of pulling inspiration from iPhone, and that would have started at a much better place than where we're at now. Throughout my testing, I found that the iPad can be used for a lot of things, but for work or productivity, my Mac does it better. For quick news or entertainment, my iPhone does it better. For gaming, my PS5 and my Switch do it better. So like I said at the beginning of the video, the iPad Pro M4 is the most overpowered Apple device that I've ever used. If you're going into it knowing all this info that I've said in this video, and you just want an awesome entertainment device that's handy to have around, well then great. But if you've got this budget to buy something functional, a MacBook Air seems like a much more practical choice. I've been using it for a little over a month, and I've got to say it's the best powered Apple product that you'll never use.